Hey, Los!
That's right. Howdy, y'all. Los here. Welcome to another episode of Bonsai-YEAH. Today, we're hanging out with Brandon Baldauf of Hawkeye Bonsai. And we're going to be talking about all sorts of fun stuff, including taper, and we're going to be doing some pruning. Today, you brought us some trees, but
Absolutely.
you brought this one we have in front of us. What are we doing here today?
So this is a trident maple, and what we're practicing and studying with this specific tree is how to develop taper. And this is a very small Shohin root over rock tree that was started by Bjorn Bjorholm and some of his students in an intensive course at ASN. And essentially, they just planted this trident on the Texas Holy Rock or limestone here and just let it grow for a couple years. And as you guys can see, the roots have definitely started to bulge and start consuming and wrapping around the rock. It was about this tall before the Takanome Bring Your Own Tree workshop that we had last week, and essentially made the decision to cut it back in favor of taper. So that's the concept that we're going to be exploring tonight. We'll use this as a specimen tree to talk about something that already has techniques applied to it, look at what taper is, and then we have a couple follow-ups from trees that you and I have worked on from Bonsai-YEAH experiences. So we'll be checking those out and seeing how we can increase the taper on them.
Cool, yeah. I hear taper a lot. You hear that word, taper, taper, taper. And why is taper important?
Well, what is taper?
Yeah, what is taper? I guess
Let's
taper
start
means
there.
that something's fatter in the bottom, and then it literally goes like a pyramid. It would be a pure taper, where it gets into a single point or a thinner point at the top.
Absolutely. It's the caliper or thickness of the primary lines or lines in general as you progress from a point at the base of the tree all the way up the design. So 100%, whenever you're looking at bonsai, the surreal depiction of the tree being 60 feet tall when it's only a foot or less, the way you pull that off, the main magic is taper.
It sells the illusion.
Absolutely. So,
yeah, which it does, because a real tree would have all that taper to it, an old tree, and
how do you replicate that in the miniature?
Yeah, I mean, you can't just take something that's already overgrown and then like just cut it to shape and it's going to look like an old tree. It's got to have the characteristics we know that old trees have, which is taper.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. And yeah, you've got some cut paste on there. I haven't seen some orange stuff.
Sure, this is just some fun product out of Japan that is like a liquid cut paste that you can apply to wounds. And it heals over. And
does it have any like hormone in it?
I don't read Japanese, so potentially it might. But yes, to your observational points, there was a large cut here that was made to now the new apex of this tree. And essentially, you can see how it's like already kind of solidified. So it's doing its job there as far as cut paste goes. The interesting thing to see here is that there was a cut that was below hand, like below that. So if you can rewind the clock on this tree, the primary trunk line was emitting from here, and it extended up into this region. And the first cut that was made was actually right along this vector, in order to give potentially the lowest branch and like a big internode the opportunity to be the new leader. So older cut is here, and now that the older cut is nearly healed over, we could give it maybe another year's worth of healing over, but I did go ahead and make the cut now.
How long ago was that cut made?
I don't know. Probably 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Tridents heal over really quickly. It's amazing, especially when they're in the right soil body and they have the right growing environment. They'll just flush out roots, and then as you let the leads grow out, then that'll pull and heal everything below the when you're growing out.
That's right.
So we grew this out, like the one that was most recently cut, as a sacrificial extension to heal over the primary cut. So when we're thinking about, this is the technique for how you create taper. So we jumped right into that. So we're doing that same concept here, to where with the new primary apex, we did a hard cut, and then essentially we'll let one of these two nodes just run as far as we want it to go, and that'll heal over the first cut and the second cut as that gets really thick, and then we'll do the hardest cut back to that one, and just continue to incrementally and slowly build out those those trunk to primary line as it moves up to the apex.
And then in the meantime, you're hoping for side branches to kind of pop out and kind of work with those to work laterally there.
We're keeping and accruing branching as we go. So from the first cut, this is the branch that was kept, and now from the second cut, we're keeping a second branch and then a new apex. So as this continues to grow out, it might get cut back for the third branch as you're progressing up the tree. So you're just kind of building and collecting branches. I don't anticipate, if a bud grows out this way, maybe this is the thing that we would make the new leader, so it's going in a new direction. Essentially, though,
it's got to go on its own. Tell us what it wants.
Exactly. Just respond to what the tree provides.
Now, these cuts that you'll make, these flush cuts, I noticed that this one is like nice and flush, and then this one's got maybe a little bit of a nub right there. Would you go back and try to flush these down a bit at some point?
Yeah, depending on
when would you do that?
Exactly. After a full year of growth, letting this just run for a whole year, we'll see what the callus and what the healover looks like, and then definitely clean it up so you get a nice rollover of the callusing tissue, and then that'll follow the patterning of the first cut that you see.
Sweet. Yeah, it's got a nice little sort of windswept look at the moment. The angle that I'm looking at it up there, so
yeah, they're all moving in kind of a uniform direction. A couple points beyond the primary trunk taper that we see, because you have the primary line where you have the roots, aka the nabari, and then the space from the roots to the first branch, that's the tenigari, or the trunk. So you have nabari, tenigari, and then as you move up, you have your first defining branch. The taper that exists from that transition, those transition points from the roots to the trunk, and then the trunk to the first internode, and the first internode to the second internode as you continue to move up, that's the taper that you're looking at. That's primary line taper. There's other types of taper too, whereas you want taper to exist in a branch as well.
Sure do. Yeah, and you would probably apply that same technique, right? Let it grow out a bit and pull it back.
Precisely. So this one had grown, this first branch had grown out extensively here, and they were about the same length. So, I cut one back to create, variation in the length of this branch, and then this will extend out. But naturally, the taper will extend and be thicker on that extending longer portion than on the piece that was cut back. So, trying to continue to establish more taper on the branch as it bifurcates, and that should also be applicable for all your branches. So really high quality bonsai has taper in the trunk as it moves up to the apex, and then each of the branches has their own subtle taper. And then finally, the third concept for taper that I wanted to share was the thickness of each of the branches relative to one another should be a subtle taper, to where your lowest branch is thick, and then as you're going up to the next branch, the next branch, the next branch,
get thinner and thinner as it goes up.
Precisely.
Creating the same illusion that you'd get with an old mature tree.
Precisely.
It's just playing tricks. You're just doing these bonsai tricks.
Exactly.
And it yields some wonderful results, but it takes one big major hurdle that we all have to. We're all experiencing it, and it's time.
Time is the master here in regards to.
It heals all wounds,
including cuts. Well said. So. These are the kind of the Japanese ideas that go into the formal aesthetics regarding creating taper on a tree that you're building from a sapling. So this is kind of the fundamental concepts, and when you have the base understanding of how that works, then naturally you can play with those and break the rules, as they say.
Yeah.
And naturally some of those rules don't apply to Yamadori because this is what nature gives you. So, reverse taper as a fault or as a flaw might actually be celebrated in a Yamadori. As an example.
Uprights are full of reverse taper, inverse taper, so it's not like an entirely bad thing. It just depends on the application and if it looks beautiful. What does it matter if it's got that or not,
Precisely. You don't have to live or die by the taper, but when you're looking at building out structure, you do want to strive for these axioms.
You want to at least live and die by it for just a little bit. You don't want to live and die by it. You just want to live it just a little bit.
Well, you don't get too wild, right? Because we can say, like, let's cut this whole thing back to just this first branch to give it the most extreme taper. And it's like, maybe not, though.
I've never seen a tree that looked like that, So, yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
I am thinking about doing a graft to add another root that kind of goes down here and then out through this hole. To maybe do another root graft.
Why
on that
not?
line. Yeah, just continue to have it just eat this rock. I think trying to go this way with one would be a little bit too extreme, But potentially something here.
How do you graft a root?
Here's how you do grafting on roots. So you take like a young whip, and essentially where the roots emanate, you would stick that in here and bury the roots. When you're repotting, you thread the whip up where you want it, and then you do a little graft right at that joint where you want it to adhere to. From there, I give it a year. That whip will fuse with the trunk and it'll keep growing. After a full year goes, you cut the whip growth, like the trunk and all the leaves off of it, so then you just have the root that's adhered to that. And after another year, you can cut it flush.
So it's the root of a whip.
Yes.
So the root would have to be a nice solid root at that point, right?
You could turn the trunk like a whip.
The trunk would be
trunk into the root.
So you would, you could bury a little whip here, and you got the trunk coming up, and you just thread it through, and then boom.
And then defoliate it.
Once it's ready, you cut the top off, and that.
Yep, and then it turns into root.
How about that?
So you could add a root graft here. That would be nice. Maybe one out of this area to fill in some of those negative spaces, like you're identifying, to give it more of a wider grasping of the rock. In this one specific area where there's a piece of cut paste, the orange blemish, right? That was two roots that were sitting right on top of one another. So in that situation, I actually cut the top root to give it favor for the lower root, to give it a little bit more flow, and just pulled it right out of the root system. So that was a choice, and we'll see that again here in a little bit tonight with the cedar elm, because there's a few examples of that on the Yamadori.
Is there anything that you want to finish with?
I mean, I am excited to know that Takanome Bonsai Society is working with Mike Lane. Mike Lane dropped this mat shirt, Kitsune Bonsai. So he's getting started on his own bonsai company. Wabi Sabi!
Wabi Sabi.
So excited to promote and share Mike Lane. He's our Shohin teacher for Takanome. But this is definitely within the realm of Shohin, so excited to propel and perpetuate this one. Hopefully you guys learned something cool about taper.
Well, it's really cool to learn more about taper and actually see it being used. I mean, it's an ugly process, right? I mean, it's not going to look beautiful, and a lot of us like that instant gratification, but if you want true gratification, it's not going to be, you can't get it instantly.
You get it as an old person.
You get it as an old person. So all you folks that are in your 30s getting into bonsai, like Nigel Saunders did, you're going to reap your rewards when you're 60 like he's doing now. So, geez, it's great to learn more about taper, and no better person to learn from than our friend Brandon Baldauf.
Happy to be here.
My man, we're low on the ground over here. So thank you guys for watching. If you like our content, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon. We'll see y'all next time. In the meantime, be cool, stay hip, and get yourself a hobby. See y'all next time. Bye.